He found a black girl alone on the sidewalk. 10 years later, a miracle happened. The morning rain had stopped, but the streets still shimmered with puddles, glinting like scattered glass beneath the soft, reluctant sunlight. Gray clouds hung low over the city, and rays of light fought their way through, bouncing off wet pavement and the occasional windshield of a passing car. The city was stirring to life, umbrellas folded and shaken dry. Hurried footsteps splashed through the remnants of the storm, and horns blared in the distance as people rushed on, faces buried in routine. No one noticed the little girl. No one. Except Mr. Daniel Carter. He was just walking back from the grocery store, a tan jacket zipped to his collar and a brown paper bag tucked securely under one arm. It was supposed to be a normal morning, but as he rounded the corner by the old brick building near 6th and Main, he nearly stumbled. There, curled up beside a lamppost, was a small black girl, maybe 6 years old, maybe younger, hunched on the very edge of the sidewalk like the world had shoved her off and forgotten she existed. Her pale green and white dress was soaked through, clinging to her skinny limbs. It was torn at the hem and stained with mud. Her tiny bare feet were shriveled and pink from the cold. Her dark hair stuck to her forehead in heavy clumps, matted by the rain. She had no shoes, no bag, no coat. Her knees were drawn tightly to her chest, and her cheek was pressed to the concrete like it was the softest pillow she had left in the world. Daniel froze. People passed her. Some glanced. No one stopped. He did. Kneeling slowly beside her, he spoke gently. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened halfway. Big, brown, hollow eyes. The kind of eyes that had cried too much for someone so young. There was nothing left in them but the echo of sorrow. "You okay?" he asked softly. She whispered one word. "Cold." That was all it took. Without a second thought, Daniel set his grocery bag on the curb, took off his jacket, and wrapped it gently around her damp shoulders. She didn't flinch. When he lifted her into his arms, she buried her face into his neck like she'd known him forever. He didn't think. He didn't pause. He just walked straight home. His small apartment was warm, quiet, and filled with memories. Photos of his late wife and daughter lined the shelves, silent witnesses to years gone by. He hadn't raised a child in decades, but the way this girl curled up on his old couch, falling asleep without a word, awakened something long buried inside him. After drying her off and offering warm soup, Daniel tried again. "What's your name?" "Aaliyah," she whispered. "Do you know where your parents are?" She shook her head. "Did someone hurt you?" Silence. That night, she slept on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket with Daniel's jacket still tightly clutched around her small frame. The next morning, Daniel made a call to child services. He explained everything he knew, which wasn't much. They sent a caseworker named Tasha who examined Aaliyah, asked a series of careful questions, and ran her photo through every available database. Ugh, no missing person report, no identification, no one looking. "She might be undocumented," Tasha said, "or quietly abandoned. It happens more than you think." "What now?" Daniel asked. "Well," she replied gently, "foster homes are full, but if you're willing, we could fast-track you as a temporary guardian." "I'll take care of her," Daniel said without hesitation, "for as long as she needs." Days turned to weeks. Aaliyah rarely spoke, but she followed Daniel from room to room, sat beside him at breakfast, and waited silently by the door when he took out the trash. Her silence wasn't emptiness. It was careful, watchful, like she was studying how to feel safe again. One day, Daniel found her in the living room, standing in front of the old upright piano that had once belonged to his wife. It had sat untouched for years, collecting dust like an old grief. Aaliyah's fingers hovered above the keys, barely touching them. You like that? He asked gently. She nodded. Go ahead. She hesitated, then touched one key, then another. A broken scale echoed softly, notes that didn't quite match, but the way her fingers moved across the keys made Daniel pause. That night she tried again, the same clumsy pattern. Then again the next day, and the next. She never spoke during it, just felt her way through each note as if music was the only language her heart still trusted. Then came Sunday morning. Daniel was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes when he heard something that made him freeze. Music. Real music. He dropped the spatula. And, rushing into the living room, he saw her. Aaliyah, sitting at the piano, eyes closed, swaying gently, playing a melody he hadn't heard in years. Amazing grace. The notes were soft, reverent, unsteady, but unmistakably beautiful. Aaliyah, he whispered. She looked up nervously. I just heard it in church once, she said. I wanted to try. Daniel knelt beside her. You didn't try, baby. You did. That was incredible. She smiled. Just a small smile. But it was her first. As the months passed, Aaliyah began to bloom. She started humming to herself, sketching small pictures, asking Daniel quiet questions at night. Her favorite time was late afternoon, when sunlight slipped through the blinds and painted gold lines across the piano keys. That's when she played the most. That's when the apartment, once quiet with grief, came alive with something new. Daniel officially became her foster parent that spring. Every Sunday at their modest church, Aaliyah was invited to play a short piece. And every time she sat at that upright piano, her hands gentle and sure, the congregation fell silent. The girl who once whispered cold on a rainy sidewalk now played music that felt like hope. And Daniel, sitting in the front pew, watched her with quiet pride, the past still close behind them, but the future, finally, taking shape. 10 years later, that miracle had a name. Her name was Aaliyah Carter, and she was no longer lost. At first it was simple hymns. Then came more complex arrangements. The congregation would grow silent whenever Aaliyah played, and some even wept. She plays like someone who's lived 1,000 years, the pastor once said softly after one of her performances. Aaliyah didn't know what to say to that. She didn't play for praise. She played because the music felt like truth, and so she kept playing. Then, one quiet afternoon, Daniel came home holding a flyer, his eyes lit with excitement. Look, he said, laying it on the table. There's a youth music competition next weekend, piano division, no entry fee. Aaliyah glanced at the paper, hesitating. I don't want to win, she murmured. Daniel gave her that steady look of his. You don't have to, just share your gift. She looked up at him. What if they don't like it? His answer was simple and sure. They will, because it's you. The auditorium was large and echoing, filled with families, judges, and teenagers in polished shoes and glittering outfits. Aaliyah wore a simple sky blue dress and neat white shoes Daniel had quietly saved up for. When her name was called, she rose slowly, nerves hidden beneath calm eyes, and walked toward the stage. The hall quieted. She sat at the piano, took a breath, closed her eyes, and began to play. Not loud, not flashy, but deep and emotional, every note telling the silent story of her life. It wasn't technical mastery that captured the room. It was the soul in the music. When she finished, the silence held for a moment. Then came the applause, rising to a standing ovation. And backstage, Aaliyah returned breathless, her heart pounding. Daniel embraced her tightly. You were perfect, he whispered. For you. She clung to him for a moment, then noticed someone approaching. A poised woman, elegant, with a tablet tucked under her arm and a badge on her blazer. Mr. Carter? She asked. Yes, Daniel replied, cautious. I represent a music foundation for prodigious youth. Your daughter, she's extraordinary. We'd like to offer her a full scholarship, private lessons, professional mentorship, even national stages." Daniel blinked, stunned. "You're serious?" She nodded. "She's not just talented, she's one in a million." As they left the building, both beaming, Aaliyah suddenly froze mid-step. Across the parking lot near a tree, a man stood watching her. Pale, nervous. He didn't clap, he didn't smile, he just stared, then quickly walked away. Daniel noticed. "Do you know him?" he asked gently. Aaliyah didn't answer, but her smile had vanished. Daniel knew in his gut, the story wasn't over. Not yet. That night, Aaliyah couldn't stop thinking about the man in the parking lot. His face didn't spark clear recognition, but her body had reacted before her mind had caught up. A chill, a pressure in her chest, like some long-buried memory stirred just beneath the surface. Over dinner, Daniel asked again, his voice gentle. "You sure you don't recognize him?" Aaliyah stared at her fork. "No," she whispered, "but I think I used to." Later that night, she sat at the piano, hands poised but still. For the first time in months, the music didn't come. Her fingers hovered, then fell into her lap. "What if my past finds me?" she asked softly. Daniel knelt beside her, his voice unwavering. "Then we face it together." Weeks passed. The scholarship became real. Aaliyah began attending private music lessons twice a week. Her instructors called her a phenomenon. Recordings of her Sunday performances went viral. One video, titled "The Piano Girl Who Slept on the Sidewalk," reached millions. Strangers sent letters, some mailed gifts, but Daniel kept her world grounded. Piano, school, laughter, quiet evenings. Then, one crisp autumn afternoon, a knock came at the door. Daniel answered to find a woman in her early 40s, well-dressed, eyes trembling, clutching a small envelope. "Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I'm Dr. Renee Lewis. I think I know Aaliyah." Daniel's breath caught. "How?" The woman opened the envelope, revealing a faded photograph of a little girl in a green and white dress, eyes hauntingly familiar. "She's my niece," Renee whispered. "She vanished 10 years ago. My brother, he was unstable. He took her and disappeared. We thought they were dead." Daniel's hands trembled as he looked at the photo. "You're saying he left her? On purpose?" Renee nodded, her voice heavy with sorrow. "He was arrested 2 weeks ago. Forged IDs, a routine traffic stop. He confessed. Said he abandoned her. Said she wouldn't stop crying." Aaliyah had stepped into the hallway, drawn by the voices. She heard the last part and stopped cold, eyes locked on Renee. "Do you remember me, sweetheart?" Renee asked gently. Aaliyah's brow furrowed. "You were there, in a photo, on a wall." Her voice was soft, uncertain. "I remember." In the weeks that followed, DNA confirmed the truth. Aaliyah's mother had passed away not long after her disappearance. No one had known what happened to the child. Renee had searched for years, filed reports, hired investigators, pleaded with authorities. But the trail had gone cold. Now she didn't want to take Aaliyah away. "You raised her," she told Daniel. "You gave her everything. I'd just love to be part of her future." Daniel looked at Aaliyah. "It's your choice," he said. Aaliyah thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You can come to my next concert." The concert was held in a grand hall with velvet seats and glittering lights. Aaliyah, now 15, wore a crisp white blouse and soft gray pants. Her presence was calm, radiant. As her fingers touched the keys of the grand piano, the hall seemed to still. She played with grace and confidence, each note crafted with purpose. Her final piece was her own composition, Sidewalk to Sky, a piece that carried every ache and every hope she had ever felt. When it ended, there wasn't just applause. There were tears, Reporters, musicians, strangers, all moved by the music of a girl who had once been forgotten on a wet sidewalk. Backstage, Renee embraced her, tears in her eyes. "Your mom would be so proud," she whispered. Aaliyah smiled through the emotion. "I hope she hears me." Months later, Aaliyah launched a non-profit called Sidewalk Symphony, its mission clear: to bring music education to children without homes. She began performing in shelters, in inner-city schools, in juvenile centers. She didn't just share her music, she shared her story. Standing in front of children who looked like she once did, she'd say, "I don't remember much about the day I was left, but I remember the day I was seen, the day someone didn't walk past." And at every step by her side was Daniel. Not just her guardian, her father. One evening, after a concert where a little girl had run up to hug Aaliyah with tears in her eyes, Daniel leaned in and whispered, "Do you know what the miracle really was?" Aaliyah tilted her head with a quiet smile. "My music?" He shook his head. "No, baby, you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.